listening to the C-10 Talk podcast. How about some C-10 Clash? Episode 3, Auto Revolution. Jason and Marcel.
International plate juggler.
Oh man, without a doubt. So let's wrap it up in the perspective of the C-10 Clash. Obviously, C-10 Talk is the podcast. You guys started with the 69 to 70 with the coolest AC known to man. Is it 69 or 70?
70.
70. Yeah. The C-10 Clash, you guys can, for the audience, you guys can check it out on their Auto Rev channel, Auto Revolution.
Whoa. Okay, so brakes are the first thing that needs to get done on this truck. We'll power wash it all off, get as much dirt, grime, grease, nastiness off this thing as we possibly can, and then we'll know what we're doing. Now before I start to power wash the engine, I'll need to cover the distributor with a plastic bag and stuff a rag down the carburetor to keep them both dry. Spray a nice even coat of everything. Let that sit in for about 3 to 5 minutes. Then I'm going to blast away with a pressure washer. Stop. That's when we stop. That was the total sign. I could do it maybe one more time. Yeah, the bolt is dragging due to rust. This is exactly what I'm talking about. Because now that'll penetrate down into the threads. It won't allow this to be damaged. Looks like everything is fine. We don't have any serious problems. And if we do, we still have 3M's lubricant that we can get in there that will penetrate all of the rust or anything that's stuck inside the thread. So I think it's just time to bust it out. Let's get this moving. Okay, that was quick. We got the front suspension already off on both sides. A-arms, everything are ready to go out to the powder coater. I want to get the steering column set out of that, and we'll start mocking up the rack and pinion conversion that we got from Flaming River. This is probably one of the first and best things that we can do for this truck, which is to upgrade the steering system. What some people call a swing set. Basically, it relies on a pitman arm and a idler arm to control the center link so it swings right to left. Now, this type of steering system is what's called a rack and pinion, and it relies on a small rack gear with a pinion gear that's just turned by the steering box, and it has a more positive feel. So it only has to move left to right in only one pivot point. So if you look, you can see that it picks up where the factory idler arm sat, and also on this side, you can see where the factory steering box lined up. One of the things I like the most is all the clearance that you have down here by the balancer, and also too, the fact that they went ahead and they made everything a complete bolt-on. So everything that replaced the steering box and the idler arm are the same holes that we went ahead and installed the bracket from Flaming River. So the next thing we're gonna have to do is, you can see obviously that the shaft that connects to the rack and pinion is inboard of the frame, whereas the old steering box was outboard of the frame. Nice and easy. You want to make sure that you've got a little bit of room for the gasket and the dash to sit. You're gonna need to align the column so you'll know that it's sitting straight up and down, and then you can go ahead and tighten up the strap. So it's time to put on this universal joint. That's going to be the first joint that we're going to use to connect the rack to the column. I'm going to squirt a little bit of spray lubricant on there first. How that shoulder bolt is going to sit right in that groove and keep this thing from moving up and down. This looks like it's a pretty straight shot, but honestly and truthfully, this isn't going to work the way that we planned it. So if you take a look at this, that's never going to turn properly, and this is never going to line up properly. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to add another universal joint. But if you put another universal joint in the way here, your steering will just flop all around. There's no way that it would actually turn smoothly. And that's why you have to add a bearing, which is basically this Heim joint. So I'm going to end up mounting this plate down here to the frame, and we're going to put this joint in place, and we're going to line up all three of these so everything moves smoothly. To mock everything up, I'm using these wood dowels that I made out of some 3/4 inch stock and just carved them out of wood. And I've got a couple different sizes that I've cut in here, and now I'm making sure that everything lines up and sits into place before I cut the one out of metal. Make sure everybody's set into place properly. And we're going to dimple the shaft that will lock everything into place. Take one of the set screws here and screw it into place. What's going to happen is it'll make an impression on the piece of shaft there. We have something we can drill. Stored these factory A-arms using parts from Rare Parts. Basically went with Moog ball joints. Nice thing is the lower ball joint just presses through just like regular old factory ones do. Because I've done these before, and I'm telling you, it's worth it to go ahead and have somebody do this for you, because this could be a real pain. Okay, so we can see right here that when we're talking about stance, there's a noticeable difference on which spring is going to lower the truck a little bit more. Obviously the newer spring is a shorter spring, but it's about the same thickness, so it'll carry the same load. It's missing about 1.5 coils, which is going to equate to about 2 inches. This is going to allow the front end to come down a little bit more, so laterally when you turn the truck left to right, it'll transfer weight better and it'll give you a more positive feel. Let me talk about brakes real quick, because if you look at this one right here, you can see this drum brake is older technology and is definitely not going to cut the mustard anymore. The disc brake that you have here is the newer technology that they introduced actually on these trucks, I believe back in 1969. And GM had a lot of good results with the car disc brakes, so they decided to go to the truck. The advantages over the two, well, disc brakes work better in heat. They can take more heat, they have more clamping force. It's just an easier design because there's less rotating mass. Obviously we want to upgrade, so we went with POL's kit right here. GM style metric caliper, a 12-inch disc. The idea between a lowered spindle is here's the center pin of the spindle. And normally you would see this being a lot lower or more in the middle of the spindle as a factory deal. However, with the pin placed up higher, it actually lowers the suspension down a little bit more, and that's how you get a better stance. And make sure that you run a cotter pin through there to avoid anything from backing out. Everything still moves nice and freely. That's super important. So shocks are really kind of a no-brainer. I mean, obviously we're going to replace this old worn-out shock with the new shock that we got here from Performance Online. This one is actually a progressive style shock that has some internal valving that allows the shock to bypass its oil into another different chamber. So a little bit more performance, same ride. Obviously something that needs to be changed out anyways because this one is such an older shock. So out with the old, in with the new. I'm going to show you the next part that is crucial to increasing the steering qualities of this truck by tenfold. And that part is an anti-sway bar. This truck wasn't even included with one of these things from the factory, so POL makes a kit that we can bolt on. We'll have to do a little bit of drilling, but it's not that big of a deal because it's actually made to fit on this truck. The right way to tighten up these end links is to really have the weight of the vehicle on the ground and then get underneath there. Where that'll take you, I can't tell you, my son. Oh, hey, we're chilling out here at the OC Fair. It's a beautiful night, kind of cooling off from all the work we've been doing the last couple days on the truck. But we got a lot done in the last couple days. Watching all these rides turn around and around has got me thinking about what kind of wheels would look good on this project. That's when it dawned on me that my buddy Juan Hernandez over at American Rebel Wheels, that's just located right here in Orange County. And I'll bet that he can give us a behind-the-scenes look at how they make some of the best wheels for this project. I'm going to enjoy a little funnel cake. Over here at American Rebel Manufacturing, there's a little bit of old world meets new world as far as the process goes in producing wheels. It's old world in the sense that each wheel is made using a low pressure casting operation, only to be followed up by using the latest CNC controlled equipment to finish off the remaining task after the casting procedure. After the guys have prepped the mold pieces, solid bars of aluminum are melted down into a liquid form to then be transferred underneath the casting press into a large ceramic container called a crucible. The machining process begins by turning down the wheel in a lathe to ensure that the wheel is round and true. Each station at American Rebel is set up for a specific task, so things like drilling for a valve stem or drilling out the bolt circle are all done right here in-house. It's crazy to think that these guys at American Rebel Wheels can take these aluminum bars and turn them into such a good-looking, strong, and timeless-looking wheel. And if you're not familiar with a trailing arm system, what's really nice about it is that the arms are long enough that it controls traction and actually puts the center of gravity underneath the cab where it should be. But also then it spreads out like a big V and offers a lot of stability back here in the rear. So this is a real sought-after suspension. One of the more labor-intense parts of installing the rear suspension kit from Performance Online is to remove the factory trailing arm crossmember that can interfere with a lowered ground clearance. POL's version of a lowered trailing arm crossmember fixes the clearance problem along with provisions for exhaust tubing to pass through rather than under the crossmember. Another great part about this crossmember is that the multiple holes that are on the mounts for the trailing arms to mount to. This feature also allows us to adjust the pinion angle to the rear end to match the amount that we've lowered the truck to. Relocating the rear shocks is a must-do on this kit, as the geometry will be off after the 7-inch drop is installed. Using a piece of pipe to stand in as a mock-up of the rear axle will help us continue to mount the rear shocks and the rear anti-sway bar. Just got back from Cook's Tire and Tune, where Randy went ahead and mounted these Mickey Thompson tires onto our American Rebel wheels that we just got. I know what you're all thinking, that I put a 15-inch wheel on this truck. And I know the popular thing is plus size wheel or something that lays out on 20-something. I went with this tire and wheel combo for a couple reasons. Number one, it's timeless. And Mickey Thompson tires are known for their performance because they've been doing drag race tires for I don't know how long. This version is what they call their SR series. It looks kind of like a modern tire in a way. It's got a lot of really wide grooves to dissipate all the water away, but still offers a lot of contact patch for a lot of traction. And that's exactly what I want. When I get the thing all bolted together, and if I get the thing to sit right, like I said, it'll look badass. If I can't get it to look right, it'll look like some old man's truck, and well, I'll have to start over. Now I know that this truck is going to have a lot of horsepower, plus it's got a huge tire out in the back. So it's a good idea that I jump on Currie Enterprises website to see what they have for a C-10. I was able to find their C-10 crate rear end program. I chose a 389 rear gear ratio along with a Yeaton True Track carrier and a set of 11-inch Explorer rear disc brakes, where they offer everything that I need to get a rear end built and delivered to my door. The first part that they showed me was assembling the third member center section. The key component of this is the True Track carrier from Yeaton, where they start out by pressing on the carrier's bearings, then they put the ring gear on, then they torque it down using some Loctite. Next, the pinion gear gets its bearing pinion support and the bearings pressed on before it's installed into the third member's case. Every third member gets checked for the proper bearing backlash, along with marking the ring and pinion gears with a pattern paste to ensure that both of the gears are mated correctly. The Centurion's housing is set into a jig and checked with an alignment bar, while the axle tubes are cut to our measurements. They'll get cut, deburred, and cleaned before they find their way back to the housing. The axle tubes get set into the housing where the measuring begins. The tubes will get tacked to the housing along with the housing ends that will get tacked as well that hold the axles into the rear end housing. Moving down the line, the housing will find its way to the final welding table. The axle pads are placed onto the rear end and triple checked before they get welded into place.
The smell of the dust is sticking onto my clothes, burns my throat, sent shivers down my spine.
Then the axles are set into a machine that drills out the flange to a 5-on-5 bolt pattern. Next, the axle splines will come to life in the broaching mill.
What makes us different is just a bullet away. No pride, but no pride can bring the boys from the graveyard. May the souls rest in peace up above. Some say we'll follow them, Lord,
Because we took the time to mock up the rear suspension before we ordered the Currie end, it made it really simple to install. The trailing arms fit perfect to the axle pads on the housing, plus the rear sway bar went right back into position along with the rear springs. Afterwards, the shocks and the rear tires are put back on, which will allow us to lower the truck back onto the ground before tightening up the sway bar links. Before I installed the track bar that we got from Performance Online, I wanted to make sure that the axle was sitting square in the frame. With both sides looking good and everything sitting in place, the track bar went in without a hitch.
Getting low, nice.
Oh, hey.
How's it going?
Good, man.
You're doing a lot of work on this.
Obviously, the front lowering kit right here is a 5-inch drop, and then the rear, it's a 7-inch drop.
That's a 7-inch drop?
Yeah, now it's
Still a little stink bug, but looks good though. But yeah, you got some big meats in the back.
But since I went with those big tires right there, I'm gonna definitely wrestle getting it down to where I really want it to, because right now it does. It looks like an old man's truck.
Yeah, I knew you're going old school, not old man.
Right.
Old school works. Right. Yeah, I mean, we're just kind of putting the front end back on and just going back in. Maybe we could take this thing for a spin or something. See how it handles.
Unfortunately, I found a cracked brake line that's now pretty severe, and that's why I wouldn't stop.
So this thing doesn't stop at all now.
No, it doesn't stop at all. And unfortunately, the brake line that broke is the one that's located right underneath the engine. So basically, the engine's got to come out.
I thought I was going crazy and tearing everything apart, but it sounds like you're going to be doing the same.
I know. I thought it was going to be, easy deal, but
Well, that's what happens sometimes. You start getting into the project and see all kinds of things that you didn't know you're planning on doing.
honestly, this thing is a little bit more severe than I thought it was. I mean, because of that AC unit that's on the top of the roof, this thing living in Palm Springs where we thought it'd be rust-free, well, the rust was free because there's plenty of it over here. And it rotted everything out on the right side. I mean, I've already got Jordan kind of working on it a little bit, and the things he's been pulling apart are just a nightmare. So for me right now, I think the next thing this thing needs is some good rust repair.
I guess we got 2 pushers now because we got it cut apart and engine coming out. So I don't know, just going back to the garage. Okay.
Yeah, let's do that. Cool. Right on.
Except
It doesn't move.
it doesn't move.